So hello, and I suppose the first thing I should do right now is show you the watch I'm wearing today, and I think you can probably see there that it's the G-Shock Square, and this is the fancy MRG version, and the only reason that I'm wearing this is because of I've got a grey top on. And yes, so Rolex, Richard Mille and Casio, the three kings. Now, at that point, I have to very quickly mention Omega. I think I have to mention the Apple Watch, the smartwatch, because that's a very new, big thing. But certainly Omega is a watch brand that deserves all the praise it gets. And also a watch brand that many people will have never heard of, MB&F. That their CEO is Max Buser, and he's just a guy that I've spoken to, and he's such a nice chap. And the reasons and the way he set up the watch company MB&F is fantastic. MB&F stands for Max Buser and Friends, and the whole thing is fantastic. And he's a super guy. And I suppose at that point, I should really mention also a chap called Wei Ko of Revolution, and he's a watch industry commentator. He also has a YouTube channel called, I think it's just Revolution, and he talks about the watch industry, and he too is such a super lovely guy. And I have spoken to him also, and he's just a wonderful chap. Now this is one of the other reasons why I like the watch industry. Is that my exposure to it is that it's such a lovely industry, and the people that I've met and spoken to, and many people I've only ever just spoken to, and that sort of brings me on to just a couple of YouTube channels that I've been watching over the years, and I really like, and I've met these guys. And there is Watch His TV YouTube channel, and the main guy there is Mark Andre, and he's a super guy. Then there is Watch Advisor with Alexander Lintz, and I really like him, and I really like what his YouTube channel does. And then there's a YouTube channel called Design Atelier, and I don't know the name of the guy that is the host of that channel. But what I've noticed is his ability to edit footage is absolutely brilliant. He literally takes any image or images, and he can work out what a new watch might look like, and then he edits those photographs and makes the watch that he thinks might be released, what it might look like. It's absolutely brilliant. Plus, he's got such a great personality, and some very good ideas about watches and the watch industry, and I really like his channel. But his editing that is brilliant. So that's Watch His TV, Watch Advisor, and Design Atelier, and I think that they're the main watch channels that I actually watch. Now I watch many others, and they're all very good. But Watch His TV, Watch Advisor, I've been watching those guys for years, and there's lots of reasons why I like those channels. And once again, a lot of the people that I have met in the watch industry, they are super. And there's one last, two people that I think you have to mention in the watch industry, and that's Jean-Claude Beaver, JCB, and his son it's Pierre. And Pierre and Jean-Claude Beaver are in the process of setting up their own watch brand business. and I don't know the latest on that, but the videos I've seen of Pierre and his father Jean-Claude Biver are so good, and I think Pierre and is going to be, I look at him, he's a young lad, and I think, wow, what's he going to do in the watch industry? And one last person, Richard Mille's son, and I forget his name, but recently I watched a video with him, and he's very cool. I don't know much about him, but what I saw told me, he was being interviewed by Waco, I think. And I think he might be the new head of Richard Mille, maybe not today, but in the future. And I thought, that is so interesting, because he's an interesting guy. There's a lot of potential there. You know, what will Richard Mille become? Anyway, that leads me back on to the three kings, Rolex, Richard Mille and Casio. I know there's only three, and I should say Omega as well. But because there's only three kings, I'm going to have to stick with Rolex, Richard Mille and Casio. Now, in my opinion, based on my work experience, based on what I have sight of and my opinion, I believe that those three watch manufacturers are the top of the industry. They are the three kings. Now, you know, for fun, many times I've chatted with people, and people have said to me, you know, who's the top watch company? What's the best watch? You know, who is the, you know, who's the top here? And at times I've thought to myself, if I was going to go to war and I had to choose a wristwatch fan base, who would be the fan base that I would choose? And very quickly I thought, G-Shock. Imagine all the G-Shock fans out there, all the soldiers and police officers and tough guys that, you know, that wear G-Shocks, and then you've got all the subculture people wearing G-Shocks, and then you've got, I think, every Richard Mille owner and wearer that I've seen, every single one wears also a G-Shock. So there is this, and the same with Rolex. I once bumped into a guy in a bar actually, and he was wearing a Rolex, not a Rolex, a Richard Mille, and it was it was a white gold Richard Mille, and RM. I forget the reference because I think I'm getting mixed up here, but it was definitely white gold. And glancing at it, I thought that's an RM. Anyway, because I was at the bar, he was at the bar, I said to him, hey, I like your RM. And he turned to me and he had a shock and horror initially. And very quickly he said, how did you recognize my watch? And I said, hey, I'm just a watch geek, and that's a very nice watch. And it took a few moments, but eventually he calmed down, and I could see that he was worried about you know, a member of the public identifying his wristwatch. Now, this was a few years ago, and so we got chatting because he probably thought, you know, this watch geek, you know, seems okay, we'll chat. And then he bought me a drink, and we got chatting more. And we spent, you know, I don't know, maybe half an hour chatting about wristwatches. And all I'd done is gone to the bar to grab a drink, and he too had gone to the bar. And, you know, and we became pals, I suppose. And that brings me on to another quick story. So this is years ago, and I was actually wearing an IWC Pilot. Now, it was a very cool limited edition Pilot. Now, at that time, I was a bit younger, and I thought I had a problem. I thought I was a watch geek, and I was nerdy. And so I didn't really tell my friends that I was into wristwatches. But I was wearing this watch in this business meeting. So in this meeting there was probably other business people, other business owners, and perhaps investors, because I remember it was a senior important meeting. And so we'd gone through the pleasantries of introducing each other, and then one of the attendees of this meeting pointed at me and said, "Hey, I like your watch. Is that the IWC Pilot so-and-so?" And I sat back in my chair for a moment and I said, yes, it is. And I was more worried about being, being pointed out as a geek, and that's really what I thought. And then luckily this guy started to explain to the other meeting attendees that I was wearing this cool watch. And then everyone started chatting about watches, and then I ended up having to take it off and give it to the person next to me, and he passed it around. And I think for the next 30 minutes in this business meeting, we were chatting about wristwatches and the wristwatch I was wearing. And I thought, we're 30 minutes in. None of the meeting agenda has been discussed yet. All we are doing is chatting about this watch and our view on wristwatches. So, I suppose that was one of the first introductions to the watch industry that I had. And the subtext to me was, it's okay being a geek and having a hobby and having an interest in wristwatches. And I suppose that was a thing that made me be a little more open. The crazy thing is, the watch I was wearing, I couldn't really afford. And at the time, I think I'd put it on some credit cards, and it was expensive. And but that also takes me to one last story. Is that at that time I was in central London, and I walked over to Bond Street, and there was probably a high-end grey market dealer, and I walked in, and he had a Richard Mille. And it was the Richard Mille RM05. And I saw it in the window, and I thought to myself, that is a nice watch. And I walked in, and there were security guards at the door back then. And so this was probably around 2002, 2003. So I'm a lot younger at that point. And one of the guys walked up to me and said, "Can I help you, sir?" And I said, "Yes, I'd like to look at that watch there." And he said, "No problem." And the price tag on it at that point in time was £20,000. Now, I knew this was ludicrous, and I thought, no wonder I don't tell people about this, because it's madness. And but I tried the watch on, and I thought, it's fantastic. And all I could think about sat there was, how do I buy this? Because I don't have the money to buy it. And I thought, I wonder if I can increase my credit limit on my credit card and buy the damn thing. And the guy was looking at me, and I thought the view he might take is, who's this young punk that can't afford this wristwatch? I need to get rid of him. But instead of him saying that, what he said to me was, look, I don't know who you are, and for all I know, you might be a Formula One racing car driver. So I'm just going to get you a cup of coffee or cup of tea. You can just sit there and think about it. And I was sat back and thought, what? This is lovely. And so I think I said, okay, I'll have a cup of coffee. And he just walked off and then left me alone in the shop. And I'm sat there with this white gold Richard Mille RM05. And I thought, wow, this is what you call customer service. The guy is so relaxed and cool. He's barely taking any interest in me. And I'm sat in a chair with a £20,000 Richard Mille RM05. Now today, a Richard Mille RM05, a second hand, 20 years old, is probably 5 times, it's probably worth 5 times that. It's probably $100,000 right now. Anyway, but back then, Richard Mille was, just on the scene. And as I sat there in this chair looking at this RM05, I thought, this is the future of wristwatches. This brand and it is brilliant. Whoever they are, this French guy, this is going to be massive. Anyway, I drank the cup of coffee. The guy in the shop was very nice to me, and we chatted, and I think he was convinced I was some Formula One racing car driver. And it might have been the way I looked, and so he was really buying into my chat. And eventually I said, look, I need to think about this. And you know, he could probably see I really wanted it. And all I could think in my mind was, how do I get the extended credit on my credit card? Because I want to buy this watch. And so, you know, this was in a lunch hour, so I probably, you know, went back to the office, and all I could think about the whole afternoon was, how do I get £20,000 on my credit card to go back and buy this watch? Anyway, as I left the shop, the guy said, do not worry, I'm going to put it back in the window, but I'm going to give you 24 hours to buy this watch. And or did he even say, I'll take it out of the window? Do you know, I think he took it out of the window, and he said, I'll give you 24 hours to come back and buy it. And I suppose, I mean, that really got me, you know, but so that was, I suppose, the second most impactful entry experience that I had to the wristwatch market. And it was around that time I obviously knew of Rolex, and I think I walked up the street, Bond Street, and I walked into Venpay. I think it was Venpay, because they're still around, and I wanted to see their Panerai watches, Omega watches, and Rolex. And I remember looking at Rolex, Panerai, and Omega, and all I could think about was this Richard Mille, you know, that I'd seen, you know, earlier. And I looked at the Rolexes, and at the time I was into the Sea Dweller, and it brand new, and I think back then, you know, the brand new price was about £5,000 or 4,950, and I looked at it, and I said, you know, could you do some discount? And, you know, I think they said, you know, we can only give you 5% discount. And I thought, do I really want it? And then I thought of the Richard Mille and at 20,000, and I thought, you know, if I buy this, I really then can't afford the Richard Mille. So I thought, you know, I don't want it. And I sort of turned my nose up, and well, I didn't really, because I like the watches, but all I could think about was this Richard Mille. Anyway, I went back to the office, and you know, people are chatting about their lunch and about, you know, where they're going at the weekend, and who's going out with who. And all I could think about was, how do I get my hands on £20,000 to buy a Richard Mille? That's all I could think about. And then I did my job, and you know, so life went on. And anyway, those are the two very first introductions to the wristwatch, to being a super geek wristwatch fan. And this is years ago, when I thought it was more like a mental infliction. I thought, it's weird to be into these watches. They are so expensive, and it's such a weird thing. And I really thought to myself, I have mental problems. I'm a super geek. And I was trying to think, have I become worse today, or am I more chilled? And I don't know, maybe I'm the same. But anyway, these experiences you apply to your understanding and your knowledge of this industry, and you know, so I've been walking around for years with brand names like Rolex, Richard Mille, Panerai, Omega, Casio G-Shock in my mind, and over the years you watch how the brands portray themselves. Their advertising campaigns, the ambassadors, There's one other company I totally forgot to mention earlier. I also bothered Patek Philippe. This is a few years ago, and there's a nice story there. And basically, I said to Patek Philippe, "Hey, how about you help me make a watch?" And they turned around and said, "Not a problem, we'll help you." And I thought, what? And I couldn't believe it. Now, at the time, I was probably chatting to individuals in the company that had license to say things like that. And I think they were more, thinking, we'll give you some brochures and maybe have you chat to one or two of our PR people. I think that's what they probably meant. But I was really impressed with Patek Philippe. And at that time, I'd looked at a lot of their advertising and how they interacted with the public. And I thought, this is really cool. The way they advertise these products. You're buying a Patek Philippe for your grandchildren and their children. You're not buying this watch for you. And I thought, that's smart. And today, of course, that sort of sales line, it would fit a lot of watch brands. Anyway, with a gun to my head and having to answer the question, what's the best watch brand in the world? I woke up the other morning and I said, it's Casio. Casio is the king of the watch industry on planet Earth. And it was when I thought to myself, if I was going to go into war and pick a fight with somebody and I had to choose a wristwatch fan base, it's the Casio G-Shock fan base. In fact, the Casio fan base, because Casio also annihilates the marketplace, the very cheaper Casio watches. And also, of course, they're Japanese, and the Japanese are very good in business. They are super at being very gentle, very controlled, and thinking through, at great lengths. And they always take a long view. They always think about not just today and tomorrow, but a year's time, 3 years' time. And they really do look at the marketplace and their customers, and they look at their product range. And I imagine that they think to themselves, let's just do our thing, and people seem to like it, so why don't we just continue doing our thing? And because of their price points, and Casio covers a lot of price points. They've got their straightforward Casio models that are tens of dollars, all the way up to their MRG range, which is actually they're expensive. They hit the $10,000 mark quite easily. And they've got a lot in the middle, and of their G-Shock range, I think the Frogman model is one of their hero brands there, and it's excellent. The MRGs are like G-Shocks but with a cherry on top. They are super duper. Like this is an MRG of the G-Shock Square, and they are super. That they're really. The way that they penetrate the marketplace. And also, I can't really see what competition they have. When you look at the marketplace that Casio is in, Casio G-Shock is in, I don't really see any competition. I mean, there are some other similar watches, like Garmin, who is very good also. There is some other brands there, but they don't have the penetration or the design range like Casio and Casio G-Shock. They literally knock it out of the park. And whatever mood you're in, whatever outfit you're wearing, you can find a watch that fits it perfectly, and then the colorway that fits it perfectly. But also their designs are off the hook. That the colorways that they their design team, the imagination that they have, and their ability to churn out new variants and new color variations is awesome. It's very, very good. Now, someone could say very quickly, what about Richard Mille? They are off the hook as well. And I have to agree with you that they are. And Richard Mille, a couple of years ago, did the Bonbon range. So all their watches had a candy sweet aesthetic design theme. So their watches all had sweets inside them, not real sweets. And I thought, and these things are in excess of $100,000. And I looked at them and I thought, actually, this banana watch and this pineapple thing looks great. And so that is crazy, and it is well thought through, because the entire lot got sold out immediately. And I suppose this does create a differential when talking about Rolex's designs, because Rolex take a different approach, and they change their designs very, very slightly and very slowly over great lengths of time. Now, one of the massive positives there is that it builds a lot of value in their products, because when you buy a Rolex watch, it's going to be on trend for many, many years. And these days, we're not talking years, we're talking decades. And I quite like the nod to their design perfection, in that they don't change their designs. They keep them so solid. And so it's so interesting. And I keep thinking of the gold two-tone GMT Rolex Submariner, and I like that a lot. I like the solid gold Rolexes as well. And there's a white gold Smurf Rolex with the blue dial and blue bezel. I like those. But would I? Am I really wanting a Rolex? And not really. I really find myself looking at Richard Mille, and today, buying those things, you have to be a very wealthy person. They've just taking it higher and higher, and now they're in a stratosphere marketplace. So it's access to entry there is really horrible. And and of course I keep looking at Rolex, and and I look at MB&F watches because they're crazy, but the engineering is out of this world. So they are really pieces of artwork. Amazing things, absolutely amazing. There's one watch called a Starship, and it has a little alien inside it. And when I first saw that, I thought, it's a sign of madness, because it's so expensive. But then a moment later, I looked at the genius of the engineering and the genius of manufacture, and I thought, I get it, I totally get it. You're buying artwork, and no wonder it's that price, because it's worth it. And recently I've been looking at Panerai quite a lot, and I love their old stuff, and I love their heritage. The bit in the middle, I'm not sure about that, and there's a few pieces today that they've released that I really like, but I tend to then fall back to the three kings: Richard Mille, Rolex, and Casio G-Shock. And I think every day, most of the time, if you're choosing a watch, the G-Shock seems to win, all the time. And I wear an Apple Watch at times as well. And recently, when I've had the Apple Watch on, I think I really prefer the Casio G-Shock, especially the square, the type I'm wearing, and I find myself gravitate back towards the Casio. And when I'm really busy, you might look at mechanical watches, and of course they've all stopped working because they've been put down for a few days. And then I grab the Casio because I know it's going to be working, and it'll have the time on it, and it'll be absolutely bang on to the second. And so these days, I do think Casio is the king of kings. And I suppose at that point, I'm going to say ciao for now. And if you think I look rough on camera, it's because I do, and I have a cold. Your eyes are not deceiving you. Anyway, I hope this ramble is okay, and you know, once again I've probably missed quite a bit, but I hope everyone is well, and I'll speak to you again soon.